World History Discussions, Chapter 7, Part 2. That's the biggest empire that the world has ever seen, the Persian Empire. So a brief summary of who the Persians were. Well, the Medes and the Persians came from the Caucasus Mountains, as did so many other Indo-European groups, and they settled into this region right here of southwestern Iran. They were related to the Indo-Aryans over here, but they were basically pastoral nomads, and they lived in the shadows of the greater empires such as Assyria and Babylon. But this would all change in 538 BCE when Cyrus the Great rose to power. So I'll do the conquest summary really quick. 553 to 550 BCE, Cyrus overthrew his Median overlord, and by 548 BCE, all of Iran was under Cyrus. And then in 546 BCE, he conquered Lydia. That was our catchy opener. And then he conquers Bactria over the next 7 years. And in 539 BCE, this is where chapter 2 ended, he conquered Babylon. In fact, the Persians were welcomed as liberators. But then in 530 BCE, Cyrus dies, unfortunately. There's his tomb in Pasargadae, where the capital was, and he is followed by Cambyses, his son. Cambyses rules until 522 BC and is most famous in 525 BCE for conquering Egypt. And then you get the greatest Persian ruler yet, from 521 to 486 BCE, and that is Darius the Great. And so now we'll get some map fun. Woohoo! So the Persian Empire, as you can see, is massive. It's way bigger than any empire we've ever studied in this discussion series so far. And it's the 20th largest empire in the world, land area-wise, but it had 35 to 44% of the world's population, and no empire in history has ever had a greater percentage of the world's population. According to the textbook, 35 million at a time, 500 BCE, when the global population was about 100 million. So yes, about a third of the entire world 2,500 years ago was in this empire under Persian rule. So just how big was it? Let's have some map fun here. So you can see Istanbul, Turkey was part of it. Karachi, Pakistan was part of it. And it's close to 3,000 miles from those places. And I always like to compare it, okay, New York to San Francisco, close to 3,000 miles. That is literally the same distance. People just don't realize how big the Middle East is. Here's another comparison. Aswan, Egypt to Karachi, Pakistan, over 3,000 miles. Now, that being said, what was also impressive was the north to south span of the empire. And we're going to get into the Royal Road later. I'm getting way ahead of myself. But you had places like Armenia and all this area under Persian rule. I took the latitude of Istanbul. And you had places like Aswan and further over Karachi. And places like Aswan and Karachi are about 24 degrees north, which is the same latitude as Key West, Florida, while places like Istanbul and Armenia are as far north as New York City. So Key West, Florida, and New York City, about that much latitude and almost as much longitude as New York to San Francisco. Speaking of which, time zones. So this is kind of confusing. This is Middle Eastern time zones, but look at that. The time in Pakistan is 3 hours ahead of the time in Egypt. This is actually wrong. It's only 2 hours ahead of the time in Turkey, because Turkey's on permanent daylight savings time, but you get the point. This one might show it better. Time zones of the Middle East, 4:37 in Pakistan, 1:37 in Egypt. Like I say, it's 2:37 in Turkey, but you get the point. And now, if you suffered through all this geography, which we're going to talk about more with the Royal Road, History of the Entire World, I guess, by Bill Wirtz, and I have a terrible middle school level joke that might get me kicked off at TikTok and Threads, but I got to tell it anyway. Let me play a little bit of this video. Play dries about 5 seconds. You're going to see where this is going. The Persians come out of the Assyrians and Babylonians. Here we go.
Never mind, it's the Babylonian media. It's the Persian Empire. Wow, that's big.
That's what she said. Anyway, I had to do that. So that's enough on geography. We're going to talk more about the Achaemenid dynasty in the very next video. Woohoo!